Well, Cecile Simons is a researcher specialising in digital harms, and she joins us now from London. Thanks for speaking to us, Cecile.
Thank you for having me.
So the poor man was shot with paintball guns, strangled, purportedly even put in the boot of a car, which then drove over 50 miles an hour over speed bumps, constantly woken up with loud noises, slapping, liquid thrown on him. As far as digital harms go, this is surely some of the worst you've seen.
I mean, absolutely. And I think that the platform was obviously flagged through multiple media investigations, as well as by rights organizations for hosting extremely violent and likely illegal content. And of course, Kick has advertised itself as a loosely moderated platform. Media reports have shown that it did not properly apply its own content moderation policies, and that really it hosted a range of violent and potentially illegal content.
Now, the lawyer for one of his fellow streamers says it was all simply staged. I mean, if that's the case, the acting is very convincing. Graven was on stream crying.
Absolutely. And these social media platforms, these loosely moderated social media platforms, which have emerged in recent years, really incentivize the creation of graphic, degrading content, extreme challenges, all sorts of content which gets clicks and views, and which then encourage that escalation. And we know that there is a level of desensitization. There is a desensitizing effect on social media when it comes to this type of content, where it becomes sadly entertainment.
Yeah, just describe to us the monetary aspect of this for those who don't understand or know about these platforms, because was it that people could give donations and in return they'd see some sort of punishment doled out to Graven?
I mean, Kick is known for being particularly kind of advantageous to content creators, and people can kind of subscribe to channels. And what in the case of Pomenov is what happened is that he created this content which was incredibly lucrative because it is shocking, because it is extremely violent, and the platforms created this permissive environment where the creation of that content and the monetization of that content was incentivized.
Now, Kick has obviously banned the streamers involved now, and it's also announced a review of all French language content. I wonder whether this is part of a wider problem in moderating not in the English language, or is it simply lax oversight and moderation across Kick more globally?
Well, I mean, Kick has looser content moderation policies. We know that obviously, language specificities are important when it comes to content moderation, but in the case of Kick, it's very much a case of having that looser content moderation, but it's also the case, of course, of the regulator not stepping in when there were multiple warnings. And here we really see the power of the regulator in applying pressure and holding these platforms to account, especially when they potentially violate national laws.
Yeah, the government has now referred Kick to local regulators. In terms of Kick itself being aware of the content, they were, because they were posting on their French social media channels promoting the kind of content going on. So they were well aware of what was going on. Is there not a kind of question around how these platforms can moderate themselves as well as being regulated by the regulators?
I mean, absolutely. Obviously, here there are kind of moderation choices that are being made by these platforms. And as I said, media reports have shown that Kick doesn't implement its, quite lax content moderation policies, and it doesn't have, or it didn't have, a legal representative in the EU or at the time when this happened. So I think that the platforms will not kind of moderate themselves, and there absolutely need to be pressure from the regulator to hold them to account for the permissive environment they have created.
Yeah, and Kick obviously being founded by the same people behind another website called Stake, which is a gambling website. That's allowed them to pay their streamers more than rival Twitch, and has allowed for perhaps people to come to Kick and then move on to Stake. Is that a particularly toxic mix to have something like a streaming platform attached to a gambling platform in this way?
Well, I think when we think of harms, we need to kind of have a holistic kind of approach to the different sort of types of content that these kind of platforms produce, and look at some of the kind of architecture of the platforms, and some of the ways in which their monetization kind of strategies allow certain types of content to proliferate. So we need to look at it together.
And of course, this was one of the most watched streams on Kick in France. It reminds me a bit of that saga with the Japanese game show all those years ago, 30 years ago, where a man was put through, came next to starvation, but millions were tuning in and watching it each day. Our appetite to watch others suffer has just not changed over the millennium. There are some things that remain in the digital age.
Absolutely. However, what the platforms kind of have done is kind of gamify some of that violence, and they have kind of created this environment where people are served more and more of that sort of content. There are incentives to create it, and there is desensitizing effect. So although obviously violence has always existed, it has become gamified through social media platforms and online platforms.